Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Earth. Tonight, we'll step back, far back, into a world before maps, before countries, before even continents. A time when all land was one, joined in a single, vast shape. What did Earth look like then, when the story of Pangea was being written in stone? Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. One of the quiet joys of making these videos is seeing comments from people scattered all across the world, each settling in under their own night sky. If you're new here, a like and a subscribe are always appreciated. And to those who are already part of this little sleepy community, thank you for being here once again. So let's begin. When we look at a world map today, we see a patchwork of shapes, each continent separated by wide oceans, each border carefully drawn in ink. However, humans have not always envisioned Earth in this way. For most of history, our ancestors had no satellites, no aerial photographs, no bird's-eye perspective to reveal the true layout of the globe. They had stories, intuition, and the landscapes directly under their feet. And through these stories, something remarkable emerges, the sense that all land was at one time whole across cultures. Myths about the Earth's form often carried echoes of unity. In Hindu cosmology, the world was sometimes envisioned as resting upon the back of a great serpent or turtle. In Chinese legend, the goddess Nuwa molded humans from yellow clay, implying a landmass, continuous and undivided. Among the ancient Greeks, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle spoke of the okeanos, an encircling world ocean surrounding a single central landmass. Even without precise measurements, there was an instinctive pull toward imagining Earth as one body, not many fragments. This intuition was not entirely misplaced. When early navigators began sketching coastlines, they noticed how certain shapes seemed to belong together. The west coast of Africa and the east coast of South America curved toward one another like two pieces of a broken vase. To the human eye, it was difficult not to notice the fit, and yet for centuries this observation remained little more than curiosity, a coincidence without an explanation. Still, some thinkers dared to ask, what if these matching coastlines were not a chance at all? In the 16th century, the Flemish cartographer Abraham Ortelius proposed that the Americas had once been joined to Europe and Africa, torn apart by earthquakes and floods. He had no evidence, only a suggestion, but his words planted a seed. Perhaps Earth was not fixed. Perhaps land could move. But even long before Ortelius, even before the Renaissance oral traditions carried their own sense of continental memory, the Polynesian navigators of the Pacific, traveling vast distances in canoes, saw islands scattered like stepping stones. Some of their charts and star maps described a time when islands were closer, joined, or reshaped by the sea. In indigenous Australian Dreamtime stories, the land was alive, shifting and breathing, rivers and mountains forming from the actions of ancestral beings. These myths were not geology, but they carried an awareness that land changes, that it has a history, written across scales beyond a single human life. It is here that we see a fascinating contrast. Ancient imagination leaned toward myth and metaphor. The land was carried by turtles, shifted by gods, or born from primordial seas. Modern science, on the other hand, describes tectonic plates sliding, colliding, and pulling apart. Yet the spirit of both is surprisingly similar, a recognition that Earth is not static, that its surface carries a story of motion and transformation. And perhaps this is why the idea of a single land resonates so deeply. Even now we feel a quiet pull toward unity. When you trace the edges of South America and Africa on a globe, the mind cannot help but wonder, did they once embrace? Were they once whole? And if they were, what kind of world was that for early humans? This was not an academic question. Their survival depended on the rhythms of the land and sea. Floods, droughts, and shifting rivers all were reminders that Earth was alive. To imagine the world as one body of land was to acknowledge that humanity itself was part of a larger, continuous whole. But for science, the turning point came much later. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, as explorers mapped coastlines and geologists studied strata, the hints began to accumulate. Fossils of identical plants and animals appeared on continents now separated by thousands of miles of ocean. Glossopteris, a fern-like plant, appeared in both South America and Africa. Mesosaurus, a freshwater reptile, was found in Brazil and South Africa, too delicate to have swum across an ocean. Rocks of identical type and age matched across distant continents. Slowly, evidence mounted that these lands had once been joined. And, yet, when German meteorologist Alfred Wegener proposed his theory of continental drift in 1912, he was ridiculed. The idea that continents could move seemed absurd, like imagining ships sailing uphill. Critics dismissed him, saying he had observed coincidences without a mechanism, but Wegener, much like Ortelius centuries before, planted another seed, one that would eventually grow into the theory of plate tectonics. Looking back now, the resistance feels almost inevitable. New ideas, especially ones that stretch our sense of scale, are often uncomfortable. To believe that entire continents drifted apart required imagining time in millions of years, far beyond human lifespan. It required believing that Earth's surface was not stable, but restless. And here lies the true beauty of the ancient idea of a single land. From mythic turtles to Wegener's drifting continents, the underlying intuition remained the same. Earth changes. Its unity may fracture, but the memory of wholeness lingers. So as we close this chapter, imagine yourself standing at the edge of an ancient shoreline, long before maps, long before borders. You would have known only the land beneath your feet, the horizon of the sea, and the stories told by elders about how this world came to be. And yet in those stories, in those shapes of coastlines and echoes of fossils, there was already a whisper of Pangea, the great single land that once was. If myths and stories gave us the first whispers of a single land, science provided the tools to trace its true outlines. To understand Pangea, we have to imagine Earth, not as a static globe, but as a restless living body, its surface in constant motion. At first glance, it's hard to believe. Mountains seem immovable, coastlines appear eternal, and yet deep. Beneath our feet, the Earth is never still. The theory that explains this motion is called plate tectonics. Imagine Earth as a great sphere wrapped in a cracked shell. That shell, the lithosphere, is not one unbroken piece, but a mosaic of giant slabs called tectonic plates. These plates float on the softer, hotter mantle beneath, moving slowly, so slowly that we don't feel it. A few centimeters each year, the pace at which fingernails grow. And yet, across millions of years, this patient drifting reshapes the entire face of the planet. Where plates collide, mountains rise. The Himalayas, for example, are still growing as India pushes into Asia. Where plates pull apart, oceans are born. The Atlantic Ocean continues to widen each year as North and South America drift away from Europe and Africa. Where they slide past each other, earthquakes ripple through the land. The grinding motion of the San Andreas Fault is just one reminder of the tension between plates. It was this idea that the Earth's surface moves that provided the missing mechanism Alfred Wegener never had. He had noticed the matching coastlines, the shared fossils, the echoes between continents, but without an engine, without an explanation for how, his theory of continental drift remained unproven. Plate tectonics became that explanation, uniting geology into a single story. But let's pause here. The science is elegant, yes, but it's also strangely poetic. Think of the continents as rafts of stone, drifting slowly across a glowing sea of molten rock. They wander, they collide, they part. Over billions of years, they have assembled into supercontinents more than once. Pangea was not the first, and it will not be the last. Geologists believe at least 3 great supercontinents preceded Pangea. There was Rodinia more than 1 billion years ago. Before that, Columbia, sometimes called Nuna, and even earlier, perhaps Kenorland. Each of these ancient configurations gathered land into a single cluster, only to break apart again. The pattern is cyclical, a rhythm of unity and separation, a heartbeat of geological time. Scientists call this the supercontinent cycle. Why do they form? The answer lies in the restless convection currents of the mantle, which slowly drag continents together, then pull them apart again. It is a process so vast, so gradual, that it almost defies imagination. To us, continents are permanent. To Earth, they are momentary arrangements like clouds drifting across the sky. And yet, though slow, the evidence of movement is everywhere if you know how to look. Take the rocks beneath your feet. A geologist can study minerals and read their magnetic orientations like a compass frozen in stone. These tiny iron particles align with Earth's magnetic field at the time the rock solidified. Because Earth's magnetic field shifts and continents drift, these orientations tell us where a rock once lay on the globe. Like breadcrumbs across deep time, they trace the wandering paths of continents back to their shared origin. Fossils, too, carry their testimony. The same species of ancient plants and animals appear across continents that are now separated by ocean. Glossopteris, that fern-like plant we met earlier, spread its leaves across South America, Africa, India, and Antarctica. Lystrosaurus, a sturdy little reptile, trudged across lands now distant. These creatures could not have crossed oceans. The only explanation is that the continents were once connected, their soils and forests continuous. Even the mountains tell the story. The Appalachian Range in North America lines up with the Caledonian Mountains of Scotland and Scandinavia. Split apart by the Atlantic Ocean today, they were once the ridges of a single massive chain running across Pangea. To walk those mountains, then, would have been to step across what are now ocean. When you put all these clues together, the fossils, the rocks, the magnetic records, the matching coastlines, the picture of Pangea emerges with quiet certainty. It is not imagination, not myth, but a reconstruction rooted in evidence. Science, in its patience, has peeled back the layers of time to reveal the unified Earth beneath. And yet, even here, there is room for wonder. For though science explains how, it cannot erase the poetry of what it means. Imagine Earth 250 million years ago, all land fused into a single supercontinent, surrounded by a boundless ocean called Panthalassa. To stand anywhere on Pangea was to be connected by land to every corner of the world. A river might flow unbroken for thousands of miles before meeting the sea. A creature might wander across deserts, forests, and mountains without ever touching salt water. Contrast this with our world today, divided by oceans, continents separated like islands. Our maps emphasize division, this country, that border. But Pangea was a reminder of unity, a time when the Earth's land was one. The beauty of science is that it does not simply tell us what happened, it also stretches our sense of time. When we look at the drifting plates, we are reminded that Earth's story unfolds on scales beyond human measure. The rise and fall of civilizations, the span of recorded history, even the existence of our species, these are brief flickers compared to the slow ballet of continents. This perspective is strangely comforting. It places us within a larger rhythm, one that began long before us and will continue long after. Pangea is gone, but its memory lingers in every fossil, every mountain, every piece of stone, and someday, far in the future, another supercontinent will form, reshaping Earth once more. As we close this chapter, we leave behind the certainty of science and prepare to step into imagination. We have traced the mechanisms, the evidence, the proof that Pangea existed. Now let's walk across it. Let's place ourselves within that ancient world to see what it might have looked like, to hear the winds that crossed its plains, and to feel, if only for a moment, the stillness of a unified Earth. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself stepping out into a world 250 million years ago. There are no familiar continents, no oceans to cross, no borders, no maps. All the land on Earth is gathered into a single vast shape, Pangea. From where you stand, the horizon stretches unbroken, land reaching outward in every direction. To walk this world is to move across a unified Earth, a place that feels both alien and strangely whole. The air itself carries a different quality. Carbon dioxide levels are higher than in our modern atmosphere, giving the air a heavier warmth. The sky is tinted a little more orange at sunset, the light scattering differently. You breathe in, and the world feels both ancient and alive. This is not our Earth, and yet it is. You begin your journey inland, across a terrain that seems endless. Much of Pangea's heart is dry and arid. With so much land pulled together, rainfall from the coasts rarely reaches the interior. You walk through vast deserts, seas of red sand stretching for hundreds of miles. The winds shape dunes into towering waves of stone and dust. The ground beneath your feet crunches with salt crystals, remnants of ancient inland seas that have evaporated under a relentless sun. But deserts are not the whole of Pangea. The land is diverse, filled with contrasts. Follow the wind, and you find yourself descending into a forest. Not like the forests of today, but dense groves of strange plants. Giant tree ferns unfurl their fronds, taller than a man. Conifers stand like spires, sharp against the sky. Lycopods, cousins of the mosses, rise in thick trunks, their bark patterned with diamond-shaped scars. The air here is damp, filled with the smell of resin and wet soil. It hums faintly with the sound of insects, dragonflies with wingspans as wide as your hand, beetles larger than your palm. At the edge of a river, you kneel to drink. The water runs clear, carrying sediments from mountains you cannot yet see. Along the bank, footprints scatter the mud, some small three-toed impressions of reptilian creatures, others broader and heavier, left by the lumbering ancestors of mammals. A lizard-like animal scurries into the undergrowth, its body scaled and shining, its gait awkward yet purposeful. Somewhere nearby, a chorus of croaking amphibians rises, their calls echoing against the trees. You continue your walk, moving ever outward, and soon the land begins to rise. Ahead of you stretches a mountain range taller than anything else in this world. These are the central Pangean mountains, formed when land masses collided and folded the earth upward. To climb them is to step into thin air, the wind biting colder with each elevation. The peaks are capped with snow, even though the world below bakes in heat. Standing at their summit, you look out across a panorama few eyes have ever seen. Forests, deserts, and plains extending farther than vision can reach. A single continent stretching from pole to pole. From up here, the unity of Pangea feels undeniable. To the east lies the vast Tethys Sea, a warm inland body of water shimmering in the sun. To the west, beyond where the land meets horizon, is Panthalassa, the great universal ocean covering most of Earth's surface. These seas frame the supercontinent, encircling it like an embrace. Yet even from this height, the seas feel far away. On Pangea, land dominates. You descend again, and the climate shifts. Closer to the coasts, rain returns. Rivers cut through. Valleys, their currents feeding wetlands and swamps. Here, life gathers in abundance. Horsetail plants rise in clusters, reeds brush against your legs, and the air buzzes with life. Reptiles lounge along the muddy banks, warming themselves in the sun. Fish leap in the shallows, their scales glinting like silver coins. And on a fallen log, you catch sight of something new, an early synapsid, a creature on the long evolutionary path toward mammals. Its body is squat, its gait sprawling, its head held low. Yet in its eyes there is something oddly familiar, a spark of kinship across time. Night falls on Pangea slowly. The sunsets here are dramatic, the light scattering across thickened air, painting the sky in hues of deep crimson and violet. As stars emerge, they shine on a world where all land is one. Imagine standing there, fire crackling beside you, looking upward into constellations that would have seemed both familiar and strange. Some stars we would recognize, others would be shifted, their positions altered by the slow wobble of Earth's axis over hundreds of millions of years. The Milky Way arcs above, but the ground beneath feels so different from the world we know, and with night comes sound. Insects chirr and trill, their calls sharper and louder than modern cousins. Amphibians croak in chorus. Somewhere in the distance, a larger animal moves through brush, snapping branches beneath its weight. Perhaps a predator on the prowl, or perhaps just another herbivore searching for food. Life is smaller here than the giant dinosaurs that would later come, but no less vibrant. Your journey continues into dawn. The climate shifts again as you walk toward polar regions. In the south, near where Antarctica rests today, Pangea stretches into colder zones. Glaciers carve their way across stone, their white surfaces gleaming under pale sunlight. The contrast is striking. One world, yet climates as varied as blazing deserts and icy tundras. The unity of land did not erase differences, it exaggerated them. And as you walk, you begin to notice something profound. Pangea is not just a landscape, it is a lesson in scale. On modern Earth, oceans define separation. They mark the boundaries of culture, migration, and history. But here, there are no oceans to divide. A creature could, in theory, cross from one edge of the continent to the other without ever touching salt water. It would take lifetimes, perhaps countless generations, but the path would be continuous. The Earth itself was a single stage, and all life performed upon it together. Of course, there were dangers too. Unity did not mean harmony. In the deep interior, far from coasts, the climate could be unforgiving. Scorching summers, freezing. Winters, little rainfall. Many species struggled to survive in these extremes, clustered instead near coasts, rivers, and mountain foothills, where water and food were more plentiful. Even in unity, Earth demanded resilience. As your walk draws to a close, you arrive at the shoreline. Before you stretches Panthalassa, the great global ocean. Its waves roll endlessly, touching every edge of Pangea. The water is deep, its mysteries unknowable. Standing here with sand beneath your feet and a boundless horizon before you, you feel both the immensity and the fragility of this ancient world. All land is one, yes, but unity is temporary. The earth beneath is restless, already deep. Cracks begin to form, rifts that one day will widen into oceans, dividing this world into the continents we know today. For now, though, you simply stand at the edge of Pangea. You look inland across deserts, forests, and mountains. You look outward across a sea that circles the globe, and you realize to walk across Pangea is not just to cross a continent, it is to step into the deep memory of Earth itself, a memory of unity, of vastness, of time, measured not in centuries, but in millions of years. As we step deeper into Pangea, the land begins to speak, not in words, but in sounds, movements, and living shapes. The earth is not silent here. Every patch of forest, every riverbank, every stretch of plain carries its own chorus. And though the world is familiar in some ways, filled with trees, rivers, and skies like ours, the life that inhabits it feels at once strange and ancient, both kin and alien. The forests hum first. Insects fill the air with a constant vibrating presence. Dragonflies with wings as wide as your hand dart above the water, their bodies glinting in the sun. Beetles crawl through bark with metallic carapaces that catch the light. Crickets and cicadas sing in rhythms we might recognize, though deeper, sharper, almost urgent. At night, their songs rise into an orchestral swell, filling the darkness with an endless, layered chorus. On the forest floor, amphibians move through damp leaf litter. Some are small, salamander-like, slipping quickly between shadows. Others are larger, broad-bodied, with wide mouths that snap at passing insects. Their calls echo with a guttural resonance, reverberating against tree trunks. Amphibians thrived here, still holding on to the old world of water, even as they ventured into the new world of land. But it is the reptiles that begin to take the stage. Across the swamps and plains, creatures crawl and walk with a confidence that signals a shift. Thick-bodied reptiles, some no larger than a cat, others the size of a small horse, claim the land as their own. One of them, the stocky Lystrosaurus, trudges across muddy ground. Its body is low and powerful, its head tipped with a beak for cropping plants. Its eyes peer outward with a quiet persistence, carrying the endurance of a species destined to survive mass extinctions to come. Nearby, another figure appears, a Dimetrodon, though not a dinosaur, but a synapsid, a distant cousin of the mammals, yet to come. Its most striking feature is the great sail on its back, a tall, spined structure catching the light. It moves with deliberate steps, its jaws lined with sharp teeth, its presence commanding. In the stillness of early morning, you might see it basking, its sail tilted toward the sun to warm its blood. The diversity is startling. Small proto-mammals scurry in burrows, their bodies soft-furred, their movements quick and cautious. They emerge at night, feeding on insects, leaving faint trails in the sand. These tiny survivors are our ancestors in waiting, delicate threads that will one day weave into the tapestry of mammals and eventually humans. Step closer to water, and life shifts again. In rivers, fish dart with sudden flashes, their scales glimmering like coins. Some are armored, their bodies encased in bony plates. Others, sleek and fast, ripple through the current, chasing insects that fall from the trees. Along the banks, crocodile-like creatures lie motionless, their bodies blending with mud, eyes just above the surface. Patient, ancient hunters, they wait for a careless amphibian to stray too close. And beyond the rivers, across the open plains, the air itself grows alive. Early flying insects buzz in thick clouds, some larger than anything we know today. Imagine walking through a field where wings flicker all around you, shadows of flight crossing your path. In the distance, herds of plant-eating reptiles graze, their bodies sturdy, their movements slow. Where herds gather, predators follow. Sleek, agile reptiles stalk through tall ferns, their tails balancing their bodies as they move with silent intent. The sounds of Pangea complete the picture. The forests creak with wind, but layered upon them are the calls of reptiles, the trills of amphibians, and the constant hum of insects. Some sounds are sharp and piercing, like whistles carried through trees. Others are low and guttural, vibrating in the chest. To close your eyes here is to enter an alien soundscape, one both soothing and unsettling. And yet, for all their strangeness, there is something deeply familiar about these lives. They drink from rivers. They bask in sunlight. They gather in herds, protect their young, seek food, and flee danger. The patterns are timeless. In Pangea, as in today's world, life is a constant balancing act between survival and growth. The climate of Pangea shapes these creatures profoundly. In the continent's heart, where rain rarely falls, life is sparse. Reptiles dominate here, their bodies better suited to conserving water and enduring heat. Farther toward the coasts, in wetter regions, amphibians and lush plants thrive, filling the environment with a denser symphony of sound and color. The unity of land creates extremes, harsh deserts beside rich forests, icy glaciers near fertile plain. And life, resilient and adaptable, finds a way into each corner. Perhaps the most moving part of walking through Pangea is the sense of continuity. Every creature you meet here, from the tiniest insect to the lumbering reptile, is part of a lineage that stretches forward into time. Some will vanish forever, leaving only faint fossils pressed into stone. Others will give rise to new branches, evolving into dinosaurs, birds, mammals, and eventually us. The ground beneath your feet is not just soil, it is a stage where deep history is being written. Think of the Lystrosaurus again, trudging across our mud, beak, lowered to feed. In its persistence lies a clue. This small, unassuming reptile will one day outlast one of Earth's greatest extinction events, carrying its line forward when so many others perish. In its survival, the story of resilience is already unfolding. Or picture the tiny synapsids, those furtive, furred creatures emerging at night. They seem insignificant beside the imposing reptiles and crocodile-like hunters. Yet from them will come mammals, whose descendants will one day light fires, paint caves, and gaze upward at stars. They do not know it, of course. They are simply surviving. But we, standing here in imagination, can see the thread that connects them to us. This is the gift of imagining life in Pangea. It reminds us that deep time is not just about continents moving, but about living beings adapting, thriving, and passing the torch of existence forward. Unity of land did not mean simplicity of life. It meant a stage vast enough for diversity to bloom in every direction. As dusk falls on this ancient world, you sit by the edge of a swamp. The water glimmers with reflections of strange plants. Insects flicker in the fading light. Somewhere, in the distance, a predator calls, a sound low and haunting, carried across the plain. Around you, the chorus of amphibians swells, joined by the rustle of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth. It is here, in this moment, that you feel the fullness of Pangea's life. It is not just a place of land and rock, but of voices, movements, and continuities. Every chirp, every footprint, every ripple in the water is part of a grand experiment, one that will eventually lead to us. And as night fully takes hold, you realize Pangea was never silent. It was always alive, always filled with movement and sound, always writing the story of Earth in the language of life. Standing at the edge of Pangea, the land behind you and the horizon stretching before you, it becomes clear. The story of this ancient world is not only written in rock and forest, but also in water. For though the continents were gathered into one, the oceans were vast beyond imagination. They were the other half of the planet's balance, immense, mysterious, and endlessly moving. The largest of these waters was Panthalassa, the great global ocean. Its name means all sea, and it truly was, covering most of Earth's surface. Panthalassa surrounded Pangea like a single, boundless embrace. Unlike today, where oceans are divided into the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and others, Panthalassa was continuous, a seemingly endless expanse that touched every coastline. To stand upon its shore was to gaze into infinity. Imagine yourself walking down to that water. The sand beneath your feet is coarser than modern beaches, littered with shells from creatures long vanished. The waves roll in with the same eternal rhythm we know today, and yet the scale feels different. Out there, no other continents wait just beyond the horizon. There are no nearby islands, no visible shores across the sea, only distance, vast and unbroken. The ocean is less a boundary than a reminder of the planet's immensity. But Panthalassa was not empty. Its waters swirled with life, much of it alien to us. Early marine reptiles with long jaws lined with teeth glided through the currents. Schools of fish darted in synchronized bursts, their scales scattering sunlight. like mirrors beneath the waves. Ammonites, relatives of today's Nautilus, drifted with coiled shells, their tentacles curling outward like delicate fingers. In the deeper waters, silent shadows moved, creatures we can only guess at from the fragments left behind in stone. Closer to the shore, coral reefs bloomed in colors we can scarcely imagine. These reefs were home to an explosion of smaller life, sponges, mollusks, and tiny crustaceans. The ocean floor here was alive with burrowing, crawling, feeding, a quiet bustle beneath the waves. Even as Pangea's desert stretched dry and endless, Panthalassa's shallows were teeming. And then there was the Tethys Sea, smaller than Panthalassa, yet equally significant. Tucked between the arms of Pangea, it was an inland sea, warm and shallow, a cradle for extraordinary biodiversity. Imagine sailing upon its gentle waters, warm breezes carrying the scent of salt. Along its shores, lush vegetation grew, nourished by moisture that the inland deserts could never provide. The Tethys became a lifeline, a corridor where marine life flourished and evolved. It is here, in the Tethys, that many ancestors of modern marine species first appeared. Fossil evidence tells us of early corals, mollusks, and fish whose lineages stretch into the oceans we know today. In some sense, when you swim in our seas now, you are moving through the legacy of the Tethys. Its waters are gone, closed by shifting continents, but its life endures. Contrast then becomes the theme of Pangea's oceans. Panthalassa was immense, endless, a stage for vast migrations and mysteries. The Tethys was intimate, nurturing, a sheltered pool where life could experiment and flourish. One spoke of scale, the other of closeness. Together they shaped the rhythm of Earth's waters during this time of unity. The climates these oceans generated were profound. Panthalassa's size meant it controlled global weather, driving immense wind patterns and currents. Storms swept across its surface, their energy unbroken by land. Imagine the roar of such a storm, waves towering, winds howling, lightning splitting the sky above an ocean with no horizon of safety. And yet, in calmer seasons, the same waters would have seemed endless and still, reflecting the stars in silence. For those who imagine standing on Pangea's coasts, it is humbling to realize how small the land feels when set against the ocean's scale. Though Pangea was massive, it covered less than 1/3 of the planet's surface. The rest was water. The unity of land was striking, yes, but it was the sea that truly dominated Earth. The continents were but islands on a global ocean, and this brings us back to something timeless. The sea in any age carries mystery. We have walked across Pangea in imagination, touched its deserts and forests and climbed its mountains, but the ocean resists such intimacy. It hides its life beneath a surface of waves, revealing only glimpses. It reminds us that even when the land was one, the earth was still more water than stone. So close your eyes and picture it, standing on the edge of Panthalassa, the Tethys behind you like a hidden heart, the wind salt-laden, the waves unceasing. Somewhere beneath those waters, creatures swim that no human will ever see. The ocean speaks in rhythms older than mountains, older than continents themselves. Its voice is eternal, lapping gently at Pangea's shore. And just as the land would one day fracture, so too would the waters change. Panthalassa would vanish, broken into the Pacific and other oceans. The Tethys would close, its memory preserved only in fossils. But in this moment, in the age of Pangea, the seas are whole, vast, and alive. The oceans beyond the shores remind us unity does not belong only to the land. In water, there has always been a connection. Waves travel unbroken, currents link distant places, and the sea itself is continuous. Even now, our modern oceans remain one body, flowing around continents, carrying warmth, storms, and that unity is the ocean's gift, a reminder that Earth is not divided but endlessly joined. The air above Pangea carried its own story. To walk across this ancient supercontinent was not only to feel the ground beneath your feet or hear the calls of strange animals, but to notice the weight of the atmosphere itself. The winds, the rains, the heat, and the cold, all of them were shaped by the way the land was gathered into one. Unlike today, where continents are scattered and oceans weave between them, Pangea stretched as a single mass across much of Earth's surface. This unity gave rise to climates that were both familiar and strange. Along the coasts, breezes carried moisture inland, feeding forests and swamps. But deeper in the heart of the continent, far from any ocean, the air grew still and dry. Deserts stretched for thousands of miles, so vast that rain could take weeks to reach them, if it ever did at all. It is hard to imagine such a scale. Today, no point on Earth lies more than a few hundred miles from an ocean. But in Pangea's interior, some regions were over 1,000 miles from the nearest sea. Here, summers burned with unbroken heat, and winters chilled with unrelieved cold. These were climates of extremes, the product of distance, of unity, of a world too wide for water to soften. And yet, at the edges, the story was different. Along Pangea's coasts, storms brewed with astonishing force. The vastness of Panthalassa meant that winds could gather strength across thousands of uninterrupted miles. When they struck land, they arrived as colossal storms, walls of rain, roaring winds, lightning dancing across the skies. Imagine standing at the shoreline, the sea foaming, the clouds towering high into the heavens, the thunder rolling like a drumbeat across the world. But beyond violence, there was rhythm. Seasons moved slowly across Pangea, driven by Earth's tilt and orbit just as they are today, yet stretched across greater contrast. In the high latitudes, ice sheets formed, grinding mountains into stone. In the tropics, monsoon-like rains came and went, bringing life for a time before withdrawing into long droughts. The land breathed with these cycles, each year a song of abundance and scarcity, flood and dryness, warmth and chill. To understand the climate of Pangea is to think in terms of contrasts. Where deserts parched the interior, lush forests thrived. Along rivers and coasts, where storms raged in one region, calm skies spread across another. The unity of the continent magnified both extremes, creating a world of sharp boundaries between abundance and desolation. Imagine walking through one of Pangea's deserts. The sun presses down, unbroken by clouds. The ground is cracked and dry, littered with bones of creatures that strayed too far. Dust devils spin across the horizon. Nights bring cold, sharp and sudden, a chill that bites after the day's heat. In this place, survival is precarious, and only the hardiest creatures endure. Now step into the wetlands of the coasts. The air is thick with moisture, the ground soft beneath your feet. Trees tower overhead, their roots twisting into waterlogged soil. Insects buzz in swarms, amphibians croak from the shallows, and the calls of reptiles echo through the canopy. Here, the climate nourishes life in abundance, every drop of rain feeding a chorus of growth. The winds of Pangea carried more than weather. They carried dust, spreading fine particles across thousands of miles. Some scientists believe that these dust storms played a role in fertilizing distant regions, transporting minerals from one end of the continent to another. In this way, even the harshest deserts contributed to the cycles of life. Storms, too, shaped the world in lasting ways. Torrential rains carved valleys, fed rivers, and filled lakes. Lightning struck forests, setting fires that cleared the land and opened space for new growth. The atmosphere itself was not a backdrop, but an active participant in Earth's history, sculpting, erasing, and renewing. And always, above it all, the skies of Pangea must have been immense, With fewer mountain ranges to break the horizon, the heavens stretched wide and unbroken. Sunsets lingered across flat plains. Stars wheeled in dazzling clarity over deserts untouched by moisture. The moon, familiar to us still, cast its light upon landscapes both alien and ancient. But perhaps the most striking quality of Pangea's climate was its vulnerability to change. The supercontinent was not eternal, and neither was its weather. Shifts in Earth's orbit, movements of the land, and the slow drift of tectonic plates altered patterns of wind and rain. Periods of warmth gave way to cooler ages. Deserts advanced, then retreated. Ice spread across the poles, then melted. The climate was a living, restless thing, always in motion. Contrast the certainty of daily rhythms, the sun rising, the storms returning, the seasons circling, with the uncertainty of deep time. In one human lifetime, the climate of Pangea might have seemed steady, reliable, and predictable. But across millions of years, it was a shifting mosaic, constantly redrawn by forces beyond sight. And here, we find a familiar echo. Our modern world, too, is shaped by climate, by winds and storms, by rains that give and take. We live within patterns of weather that feel permanent, but are, in truth, fleeting. Pangea reminds us that Earth's atmosphere has always been dynamic, always in flux, always capable of transformation. To sit quietly in imagination under the skies of Pangea is to feel both awe and humility. The sun arcs across a land too wide for rain to touch. Storms roar against coasts with power, unbroken by other continents. Seasons stretch across deserts, and forests offering life and hardship in equal measure. And through it all, the atmosphere breathes restless and immense, shaping the destiny of the world below. In the end, Pangea's climate was not just about heat or cold, drought or storm. It was about contrast, rhythm, and change. It was the atmosphere as a storyteller, weaving together the land and the sea, the creatures and the plants, the struggles and the abundance. To imagine it is to hear the whispers of wind across endless plains, the crash of storms against a unified shore, the silence of a desert night, and the call of life in a fertile wetland. The climate of Pangea was not uniform, not gentle, not forgiving, but it was alive, vast, and deeply creative, a force that tested life, shaped landscapes, and set the stage for all that would come after. For millions of years, Pangea stood as one, a supercontinent vast enough to cradle deserts, forests, rivers, and mountains under a single name. It was a vision of unity, land connected, seas surrounding, life adapting to its shared stage. But nothing on Earth remains still forever. The very rocks beneath our feet carry an ancient restlessness. It begins almost imperceptibly, deep beneath. The crust, molten currents stir, carrying heat from Earth's core outward. These currents are the invisible hands of geology, shifting plates like pieces on a slow-moving puzzle. At first, the changes are so gradual as to be unnoticeable. A seam opens here, a crack deepens there. The ground trembles on rare occasions, but the continent holds. Yet over millions of years, the fractures widen, valleys stretch, rivers alter their courses, and volcanoes erupt along weakening lines. Imagine standing on Pangea at this time. The land beneath your feet feels solid, but somewhere far away a fissure opens. You cannot see it, but the Earth has begun to change its shape. The first great sign of separation comes with the Atlantic Rift. What was once a seamless expanse begins to split, pulling apart into pieces that will become Africa, South America, and eventually North America. Water pours into these growing cracks, forming new seas. At first, they are narrow like lakes or gulfs, but slowly, century by century, they widen into true oceans. What was once a line on the map becomes a gulf, too wide to cross on foot. This breaking of unity is not a sudden catastrophe, but a slow unweaving. Forests that were once connected are severed. Animal populations, once able to wander freely across the continent, find themselves isolated. Over time, isolation becomes the mother of diversity. Species evolve separately, adapting to their new homes. Life fragments as surely as the land does, carrying the seeds of change into every corner. The climate shifts as well. When the land breaks apart, oceans slip between the pieces, altering winds and rains. Regions that were once dry grow wetter. Fertile areas become arid. The atmosphere, sensitive to geography, redraws its pattern. Storms find new paths. Currents form in seas that did not exist before. The breaking of unity ripples outward, reshaping not only the land but the very air and water. And with this comes contrast, the very contrast that defines our modern world. Where once there was one great continent, now there are many. Each develops its own character, its own boundaries, its own ecosystems. The story of unity gives way to the story of diversity, the world we recognize today. But imagine, for a moment, the experience of life itself during this breaking. A herd of reptiles grazing near a rift valley might hear distant rumbles, the earth shuddering beneath them. Rivers they once depended on vanish into widening cracks. Plants along the fault lines wither, their roots exposed to new heat and gases. Slowly, the herd must move, adapting to an environment that seems to slip away beneath their feet. For smaller creatures, insects, amphibians, early mammals, the change comes not as sudden terror, but as subtle displacement. A forest becomes fragmented, a marsh dries into scrubland, a coastline shifts farther and farther away. Their worlds shrink and transform, forcing them into new niches. What seems gradual on a planetary scale is profound on the scale of daily survival. The breaking of Pangea is a reminder that unity is always temporary. The continents that drift apart will never again be fully joined. The lines of fracture are permanent, even if oceans rise to conceal them. In this way, the Earth tells us that change is not failure, but simply the next step in its story. There is something bittersweet in imagining it. For so long, Pangea represented a singular wholeness, one land beneath the sky, one ocean surrounding it. Its breaking feels almost like loss, as if the Earth itself were letting go of something rare and beautiful. And yet, from that loss comes creation. The diversity of life we know today, the spread of mammals, the rise of birds, the unique ecosystems of every continent, all of it was born from separation. Contrast once again becomes the lesson. Unity gave us resilience, the great persistence of species like the Lystrosaurus that crossed Pangea's plains. Separation gave us diversity, the branching tree of life that would one day lead to us. Without the breaking, there would be no variety of worlds to explore, no Amazon rainforest or Sahara desert, no icy tundra or Australian outback. The Earth had to fracture to create from above. If we could watch the slow dance of plates across millions of years, the beauty of this transformation would be undeniable. Land masses drift like rafts across a dark sea. They collide, tear apart, and slide past one another, carrying mountains and rivers with them. Volcanoes flare at the seams, painting the sky with fire. Oceans expand, waves rushing into newborn basins. It is creation written in movement. Today, the evidence of this breaking is all around us. The Atlantic Ocean, still widening, is the child of Pangea's first fracture. The Himalayas, towering between India and Asia, rose from the collision of pieces once torn apart. The Red Sea, narrow and elongated, is the echo of rifting in progress. Even now, the continents continue to drift, slow but unyielding. Unity, we see, is always temporary, and yet perhaps that is the deeper beauty. Unity is precious precisely because it cannot last. Pangea's breaking was not a flaw but an inevitability, a reminder that the Earth itself is alive in ways that stretch beyond our lifetimes. Its surface moves, reshapes, reinvents. To imagine standing at the moment of fracture is to realize how small we are against the patience of the planet. So let us linger here, on the edge of that change. The land stretches wide, but the cracks are beginning to show. The winds shift, carrying new scents of salt water where none existed before. The rumble of the earth is faint, but it is steady. You look out across the horizon knowing that the world you see will not remain. And perhaps in that realization there is both melancholy and wonder, for the breaking of unity is not only the end of something vast, it is also the beginning of the world we know, a world of many continents, many climates, many voices, out of separation, variety, out of fracture, creation, out of the loss of Pangea, the richness of Earth. Though Pangea vanished over 175 million years ago, it has never truly left us. Its shape has broken apart, its unity dissolved, but traces of its existence are everywhere if you know where to look. Like the faint memory of a dream, Pangea echoes through the landscapes, the patterns of life, and even the very air we breathe today. Begin with the shorelines. Look at a world map, and you might notice how the eastern coast of South America seems to nestle almost perfectly against the western edge of Africa. This is no coincidence. They were once joined, parts of the same landmass, separated only by the slow widening of the Atlantic. The puzzle piece fit of these continents is one of Pangea's most visible ghosts, a reminder of when they shared rivers, forests, and animals long before an ocean divided them. The echoes go deeper than coastlines. Fossils tell the story too. In South America, paleontologists find the bones of Mesosaurus, a small reptile that lived in shallow waters. The same fossils appear in Africa, across an ocean that would have been impossible for the creature to cross. The only explanation is that these lands were once joined. Similar patterns repeat with plants, ancient ferns whose remains lie scattered across India, South America, Africa, and Antarctica, a botanical signature written across the globe, pointing back to unity. Mountains also whisper Pangea's story. The Appalachian Range in North America aligns with ranges in Scotland and Norway, remnants of a time when they were a single, continuous chain. Today they stand apart, separated by seas and continents, yet their rocks match like pages torn from the same book. Even the Himalayas, though formed later, are part of the ongoing tale, evidence that continents, once sundered, continue to collide and reshape the Earth. Climate carries its echo too. The deserts of modern Africa and the Middle East trace their lineage back to Pangea's great arid interior. Patterns of wind and rain established long ago still ripple through global systems today. Ocean currents, shaped partly by the positions of continents, are descendants of the currents that once circled Panthalassa and the Tethys Sea. The memory of Pangea lingers in every storm, every tide, every shifting wind. And then there are the animals, not just as fossils, but as living connections. Marsupials, for instance, tell a story of ancient migrations. Once widespread across Pangea's connected lands, their descendants are now concentrated in Australia and the Americas, isolated by oceans that appeared after the break. Penguins in the southern hemisphere, camels in Asia and Africa, and even the distribution of songbirds trace back to roots made possible by supercontinental unity. Every species carries in its DNA the record of journeys shaped by Pangea's geography. But perhaps the most profound echo is the concept of drift itself. Pangea reminds us that continents are not fixed, that the earth beneath us is in constant motion. The coastlines we know, the places we call permanent, are only temporary configurations in a much larger dance. Every mountain range, every ocean basin is part of a story still unfolding. To walk across the earth today is to tread upon fragments of Pangea, pieces of a puzzle that continues to move. In this way, Pangea lives on not only in rocks and fossils, but in our imagination. Maps of the ancient supercontinent often stir something in us, a recognition of wholeness, a vision of Earth not as many parts but as one. there is a strange comfort in knowing that the continents we now treat as separate once belonged together. It suggests a deeper unity, a reminder that division is only temporary. And perhaps this is why the idea of Pangea captures our curiosity even now. It is not just a scientific fact, but a symbol. It represents the possibility of connection across distance, the reminder that what is separate today was once joined. The Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the endless Pacific, all of these are, in a sense, scars of separation, but they are also bridges to memory. Consider, too, the thought that Pangea may not be unique. Geologists believe other supercontinents came before it. Rodinia, Gondwana, Colombia, and others will come after. Already, the continents are drifting in new directions. Millions of years from now, they may join again into a new supercontinent. The echo of Pangea is not just in the past. It is in the future, a rhythm that repeats across deep time. To notice these echoes is to look at the present world with new eyes. A mountain in Norway, a fossil in Brazil, a bird in Australia. Each is a thread that leads backward into the fabric of Pangea. We live not apart from it, but within its legacy. The Earth we inhabit today is a continuation of that ancient unity, reshaped but never erased. So when you look at a globe, pause for a moment. Trace the edges of Africa and South America and line them together in your mind. Imagine the forests that once stretched across them, the rivers that flowed unbroken, the animals that crossed freely. Listen to the faint whisper of waves that lapped against Pangea's single shore. Feel the continuity of time, the reminder that our world is not static, but alive, moving, and deeply connected. Pangea may be gone, but its presence is everywhere. In the rocks beneath us, the winds above us, the creatures that walk beside us, the earth remembers, and through its memory, so do we. What if the unity of Pangea had never ended? What if the slow drift of continents, the widening of oceans, the splitting of lands had simply paused, and the world had remained one vast supercontinent, ringed by a single ocean? It is a question that carries both science and poetry, for the answer is partly written in geology and partly in imagination. The first difference would be in climate. A permanent Pangea would have meant deserts stretching endlessly across its heart, too far from seas to know regular rain. Life in the interior might have been sparse, scattered along rivers and oases. Along the coasts, though, vast wetlands and storm-lashed forests would have thrived, fed by the constant touch of ocean air. Earth's weather would have been sharper in its contrasts, dry and wet, hot and cold, each more extreme because no new seas or scattered continents would soften the patterns. Species, too, would have lived different lives. Without separation, there would be no isolated islands of evolution, no kangaroos in Australia, no lemurs in Madagascar, no penguins of the southern seas. Creatures would have roamed freely across one continuous land, mingling, competing, and adapting together. Diversity, as we know it today, might have been smaller. Instead of a branching tree of life spreading across scattered continents, the world might have held a more unified but less varied set of species. Human history, too, would have unfolded in another shape. Civilizations may never have been divided by ocean. Cultures could have met earlier, blended sooner, perhaps avoiding some of the isolation and rediscovery that marked our story. Great deserts, however, might still have served as natural barriers, seas of sand where journeys faltered. Unity of land would not always have meant unity of people. And then there is the ocean itself. A single global sea, Panthalassa Multi, would still have surrounded the land. Its storms would have been immense, its currents strong, its depths largely unknown. Maritime exploration might have been more daunting, more dangerous, with fewer islands to serve as stepping stones. The ocean would have remained an even more profound mystery than it was in our real history. Yet, in imagining this world that never was, we see the gift of what did happen. The breaking of Pangea created diversity. Of landscapes, of climates, of species, of cultures, the scattering of continents gave rise to variety, and variety is the root of resilience. Life adapts more quickly when it branches, when it faces different challenges in different corners of the world. Unity is beautiful, but separation is creative. Still, something is haunting in the thought of a world where all land remains joined. A single road might stretch from pole to pole. A herd of animals might migrate across thousands of miles without ever touching a coastline. A person could walk, if only in imagination, from one end of the earth to the other without crossing.
Would such a world feel smaller, more contained?
Or larger, more daunting in its unbroken expanse? The truth is, Earth did not choose unity. The plates moved, the land fractured, and our world became the patchwork we know today. But the possibility of unity lingers in our thoughts, just as the memory of Pangea lingers in stone. To ask, what if, is to glimpse an alternate Earth, one vast, one whole, one land beneath the sky. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson of Pangea. Unity is not permanent, but neither is separation. The continents will drift again, joining and breaking in cycles, beyond our time. One day, another supercontinent may form, and the Earth will once more wear the shape of unity. Until then, we live in the echoes of what was, and the possibilities of what might be. And so, we arrive at the quiet end of our journey, from the ancient unity of Pangea to the far horizons of a future Earth still waiting to be born. We have walked across vast deserts, listened to the storms of long-vanished seas, and imagined the lives that once filled a world both strange and familiar. What lingers now is not just the shape of continents or the rise and fall of mountains, but a sense of perspective. The Earth is always in motion, always reshaping itself, always weaving stories far longer than our own lifetimes. In Pangea's memory, and in the promise of supercontinents yet to come, we glimpse the truth that change is the planet's most enduring rhythm. Perhaps that is why this story feels so calming. It reminds us that even the grandest separations are temporary, and that unity, in time, always returns. As you rest tonight, let your thoughts drift like continents, slow, steady, inevitable, toward dreams of ancient shores and future lands. For in sleep, as in Earth's story, everything is part of a greater whole. Good night, and thank you for wandering with me.